Hello, this is Michael Onas on WorldBeat Radio and Television, and we are talking politics. Specifically, we are talking about the current presidential election primaries going on in the United States. Now, if you're not in the U.S., I'm sure you've heard the stories about our current candidates who are running for the high office. And specifically, we have Hillary Clinton, whom most of our audience in Africa know who she is. Through the fact that she was previous former First Lady under the leadership of Bill Clinton, who most in Africa really care for and love before the Bush election and subsequently Barack Obama. We also have Bernie Sanders, who's run for the Democratic primary nomination. And of course, we have Donald Trump. So what I'm going to be talking about specifically to you, the audience, is just giving you an insight political analysis of how the election is going on in the U.S. in comparison to, say, Africa election, for example, and just kind of give you an idea of what the forecast is looking, what the roadmap is looking like. If, for example, Hillary Clinton became the next president, or if Bernie Sanders become the next president, or God forbid, if Donald Trump becomes the president. I can say that because, of course, this is my show, and I've got my own political opinion that, who's going to fire me anyway. But to just kind of give you a good setup for the programs, I want to kind of introduce you again to the candidates so that you have a good idea who they are, who I'm talking about. So here's Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders is running under the Democratic Party. And he was proud to joining the Democratic Party last year for the sole purpose of running for the presidency. He was an independent party member. And even though he had caucus, which is basically, joined together with the Democratic Party and voted alongside Democratic most of the time, he was mostly independent. So he's a newbie in the Democratic Party, and it's got its own social view, what you may call a social welfare type view of, free giveaways, less taxes, and so on and so forth, that he's bringing to the Democratic Party. And some of his agendas and ideas are fairly, in contrast to Hillary Clinton and sometimes unrealistic. But he has a large group of electorates who are basically voting for him. And it's actually, in some cases, winning votes against Hillary Clinton, and has been giving Hillary Clinton a run for her money in some of this election. For example, she just won several of the primaries yesterday. So that's Bernie Sanders. Again, Hillary Clinton, most of you know who she is, but I'll introduce her to you guys again so you can see, who I'm talking about. Here's Hillary, former First Lady, former senator from the state of New York, and he was also, running he ran for the presidential office the same time that Barack Obama ran the last time around when Barack Obama won. So here's Hillary Clinton. And of course, the white elephant in the room, the big elephant in the room is Donald Trump. And here's Donald Trump. He claims to be a multimillionaire, but this is a guy who is basically filed for bankruptcy 4 times repeatedly, ran several businesses or initiatives to the ground. And if you're talking about somebody being so arrogant and pompous and insultive and just rude to everybody, here's this guy. And to kind of give you an idea who Donald Trump is, I'm going to basically just let the video about Donald Trump. I would actually let Donald Trump speak for himself. For some of our listeners and viewers in Africa who may not have access to all the charades and all the shenanigans that Donald Trump has been doing throughout most of his primary, because Donald Trump is now the de facto nominee for the presidential post in the Republican Party. So here's Donald Trump, if you have not heard about him before.
Who is Uma married to? One of the great sleazebags of our time. She's married to Anthony Weiner. The little bing, 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 bum, bum. I love you very much.
Jeb, I can't call him Bush. He doesn't use his last name. Did you ever see a sign that says Jeb Bush or Bush? Now, there's a reason he doesn't use his last name, because it's not going to work too well, because we had a lot of problems with that last name. You know, I've been watching Bush on the border. He's in a seersucker suit. He's talking about, yes, oh, yes, the anchor baby. Oh, I shouldn't say anchor baby. Now, I have heard that Jeb Bush was the mentor to Marco Rubio. Two nice people. I think Jeb is a nice person. He's very low energy. I'm not used to that kind of a person. Kerry, who's a baby. I mean, here's a guy goes on a bicycle to go on a bicycle race. He's 73 years old. He's in a bicycle race. He falls. He breaks his leg during the negotiation. And I tell everybody, and you probably heard it, I swear to you, I will never be in a bicycle race as long as I'm president. President Obama, Secretary Kerry, I highly think you should read this book quickly. Quickly! But if I were Marco, but in particular, if I was Jeb, I wouldn't say Marco's a good friend of mine. Marco did something that he wasn't supposed to do. He ran. I've never said this before. And I watch these two guys, and they're hugging, and they're kissing, and they're holding each other. Very much like, actually, Chris Christie did with the president. Very much.
So Uma is getting classified secrets. She's married to Anthony Weiner, who's a perv. No, he is. He is.
I went to the Wharton School of Finance. You know, like really smart people go to the Wharton School of Finance, I would tell you. Now, I have great respect for China and their leaders. And hey, look, the largest bank in the world is from China. They're a tenant of one of my buildings. They just devalued their currency the other day. 2 decades, the biggest they've ever had. They're killing us. You know what that is? They call it a sucking action. Every time you see them, you know what the sucking is? They're sucking the jobs and the money right out of our country. That's what they're doing. And then they say, you can't build a wall. It's too big. It doesn't work. Well, 3,000 years ago, right? The Great Wall of China was built. We'd like to have that wall. That wall, nobody gets through. That I can tell you. I want it to be so beautiful, because maybe someday they're going to call it the Trump Wall. Maybe. So I have to make sure it's beautiful, right? I'm a great builder. What I do best in life, in all fairness, I build. Which is good, because your infrastructure in this country is crumbling. Isn't it nice to have a builder? All of that money that's going to Hillary and Jeb and Scott and Marco and all of them, the people that are putting up that money it's like puppets. Bing, bing. No, but they're hugging and they're kissing. They're hugging and they're kissing, and they're proclaiming their great deep love for each other. And I'm saying, politicians, all talk, no action. It's all bull. We got to stop.
Do you know Xi Jinping? I never heard of him. I don't know who he is. He's getting a big dinner free at the White House, addressing the UN. If you were president, would you throw him a big dinner?
I would not be throwing him a dinner. We've had this conversation. I'd get him a McDonald's hamburger, and I'd say, we got to get down to work. Actually, most people didn't. I own the Bank of America building in San Francisco. Big, big, big chunk. And it's a great building. Got it from the Chinese. I did great. Great. They still don't know what happened. But that's what we need, right?
So she's married. Now, these are confidential documents. She's married to this guy and guess what happens to Anthony Weiner? A month ago, I see he went to work for a public relations firm. Do you believe it?
Ricardo Sanchez, known as El Mandrel, on his Spanish drive time radio show in Los Angeles, has taken to calling Donald J. Trump El Hombre del Peliquin. In other words, the man of the toupee. This is on the front page of the New York Times. I don't wear a toupee. It's my hair. I swear. Come here. Come here. Come here. This is great. Just real quick. We don't want to mess it up too much, because I do use hairspray. That I say. Come. Is it mine? Look. Yes, it is. Say it, please.
Yes, I believe it is.
Thank you. Last week, you've heard me say this, I turned down $5 million by a big lobbyist. Not a bad person. You know, tough guy. Not a bad person. But when he gives me $5, he's not doing that because he thinks I have beautiful hair. Graham, has anyone ever heard of Lindsey Graham? This guy. I mean, So a poll came out the other day. He was at 0. 0. Even Pataki was higher. Pataki was at 0 with an arrow up. That means he got 1. But Lindsey Graham actually had 0.
No, that's the way it is. CNN is terrible. CNN. You're with CNN? Are you with CNN? Good. You people do not cover us accurately at all. So they have a few protesters outside, and they have thousands of people. And the first question from CNN is about protesters.
Our governor here in Massachusetts, Charlie Baker, has described some of your comments about women as reprehensible. Do you have a response to that?
No, he must have been talking about Jeb Bush. Because frankly, Jeb Bush said he didn't want to fund women's health issues. And then he came back a few hours later and he said he misspoke. I think he must be talking about Jeb Bush. He's not talking about me. You mean it's not politically correct and yet everybody uses it? So you know what? Give me a different term. Give me a different term. What else would you like to say? Oh, you want me to say that? Okay, I said, no, I'll use the word anchor baby. Excuse me. I'll use the word anchor baby. You know, I read a lot of the phony reports, a couple of reports today in the paper saying, oh, well, you know, when Donald Trump gets tired of doing this, he's doing great, and he's leading all the polls, but at some point he'll get, I'm not going anywhere, folks. I'm not doing this for my health. I'm doing this to make America great again.
So that is Donald Trump for you. Arrogant, bombastic to say the least. A guy who's totally full of himself. And believe it or not, this guy could be our next president. You know, worse things have happened in American politics before. But you could imagine somebody like this who is rude to everybody, rude to his people, the people in his own party, and calls women names, calls everybody names, very arrogant. How could this person actually create a unity within the country? Now, here's my opinion on this. The Republican Party actually deserve Donald Trump because these same people have sat on their hand for the last 7.5 years since Obama became president and did absolutely nothing. They basically were doing everything to block every Obama initiatives, and they were not even coming back to the table to suggest a solution in cases where they could have worked with the president. And while they were doing that, Donald Trump was leading the birther movement, basically saying that the president of the United States did not qualify to be a president because he was not born in the country. And he was just leading out this false agenda within the Republican Party and taking over the party pretty much and marginalizing the electorate within the party, while the key people in the Republican Party were busy at the Senate and the Congress blocking Obama's initiatives. So this is kind of like something that they deserve. They deserve this monster called Donald Trump on their hand, because right now, everybody in the Republican Party, every single one of those people who are anti-Obama, will not do anything to work with Obama, will try to shut Obama down, are now running around with their tail between their legs, trying to hide because they don't want to support Donald Trump. If you think this is funny, today, Donald Trump, basically, here's a guy who will tell you, before you even ask him, how much money he has, how he's very wealthy. But I want to ask you, if Donald Trump is wealthy, why did he have to file for bankruptcy 4 times? And why is he using other people's money to invest or to do his real estate project only to put his name on it as if he actually owns those property? Here's what I'm saying. From where I'm from, people who actually have money, people who are wealthy, do not go around pumping their chest and telling you how much money they have. You know, it's like Warren Buffett. You never see this guy going around, one of the wealthiest people on earth, telling everybody how much money he's worth. Bill Gates will never come out and tell you how much money he's worth. But Donald Trump, who does not even compare with any of these people, will tell you how much money he has, you know, and how he's funding his own election. My personal prediction is that if Donald Trump failed in his effort to hijack the Republican Party and become the president, he's just literally months away from filing for another bankruptcy and asking for taxpayers to bail him out, which may explain why Donald Trump is reluctant, you know, to do what every political candidate for a high office in this country have done historically by showing their tax returns. You have to do this. But guess what? Today, Donald Trump is telling everybody who could listen that he's not filing because he's been audited. Here's a copy of a text from Trump today. He's not going to show his tax returns until after the election, so that you don't really know through your tax return how much Mr. Bombastic is worth. Because if he shows it, we actually find out that it's not really worth what he's been telling everybody that he is worth. And more than that, most of Donald Trump's electorates are people who believe that because he's been successful financially in his business, quote unquote successful, then that money will kind of trickle down to them if they put him in office. So let me ask you this much. Will you trust somebody who has mismanaged their own businesses and lost other people's money and had to file for bankruptcy a record 4 times to run your own personal portfolio? But these people don't really care. They're just angry because, the Republican Party hasn't done anything for them for the last 7.5 years. So they just want the quote-unquote establishment, out of the office, which is great because that may work to the Democrats' advantage in the sense that, Hillary will become the president and hopefully will be able to actually elect Senate and Congress, both houses, to support her in moving the country forward, because it's pretty much been stagnant while President Obama's hands has been tied beyond his own control. So that is Donald Trump. But here's what I want to show you. Everybody in the Republican Party, including Jeb Bush, including Mitt Romney, are literally saying out loud how they will not support this guy, how they will not vote for him. So Donald Trump is coming to a Republican Party as a Democratic Party reject, and it's pretty much turned the whole party upside down and alienate everyone amongst themselves. So single-handedly, what the Republican Party have been accusing Obama of trying to do, Donald Trump is actually going to end up doing it, which is basically destroy the Republican Party as we know it today. And many of the people are just saying basically never Trumped. I'll show you a text that is being sent out today by Mitt Romney, who was previously a presidential candidate in the Republican Party, in which is basically saying, you know what, shoving insult back to Trump, calling Donald Trump a liar, calling him a con artist, calling him all kind of stuff. It's just ridiculous how much insult they exchange within the party. And this is the first time that I know of that in American political process that I've been in this country for quite a while now, where a party is actually turning against its own nominee. It's turning their back. I mean, all the Bushes, everybody is basically saying, we're not going to vote for this guy. And he's basically arrogantly saying, I don't care if you vote for me because I've got people who are voting for me and they don't care about the establishment. They are totally anti-establishment. This is more funnier than comedy. But in order to take you further down, let me show you what my president think of Donald Trump, so that you can have a good idea of just how ridiculous this scenario is. Here's President Obama on Donald Trump.
I mean, imagine what Trump would say if he actually had a record like this. Instead of selling steaks, has anybody tried that wine? How good can that wine be? So here's the truth. Look it up. America's pretty darn great right now. America's moving forward right now. The American people should be proud of what we achieved together right now. So what we should be focused on is how we can do even better. Build on the progress we've made, not reverse it. And instead, we've got a debate inside the other party that is fantasy and schoolyard taunts and selling stuff like it's the Home Shopping Network. And then you've got the Republican establishment. They're very exercised. We're shocked that somebody would be saying these things. We're shocked that somebody's fanning anti-immigrant sentiment or anti-Muslim sentiment. We're shocked. We're shocked that somebody could be loose with the facts or distort someone's record. Shocked. You know, how can you be shocked? This is the guy, remember, who was sure that I was born in Kenya. Who just wouldn't let it go. And all this same Republican establishment, they weren't saying nothing. As long as it was directed at me, they were fine with it.
You said in September 30th that ISIS was not a
am I
not a
talking
factor.
or are you talking, Jeb?
I'm
You can
talking
go
right
back.
now. I'm talking.
You can go back. You're not
I'm
talking.
talking.
You interrupted me,
September
Jeb. Are you
30th,
going to
you said it.
apologize, Jeb? No. Am I allowed to finish?
Yeah, one at a time.
Excuse
Go ahead,
me. Am I allowed to finish?
Go ahead, Mr. Trump.
So,
Little of your own
again,
medicine there,
I
Jeb.
know
Governor-
you're trying
Governor
to build
Bush,
up your energy,
please.
Jeb, but it's not working
One at a
very well.
time.
Yeah.
Somebody criticized me the other day because they asked me what I do, and I said, I'm going to bomb the shit out of them. It's true. I don't care. I don't care. They've got to be stopped. Marco Rubio's personal finances are discredited. Oh, no, his personal finance, all you have to do is look at his credit card. I mean, he is a disaster with his credit cards. I look at Rubio, he's a lightweight. He's a lightweight. Everyone said, oh, Rubio, he's the next Reagan. He's no Reagan, that I can tell you. I mean, my hair is better than his hair, that I can tell you. So they ask Rubio, what do you think of Bush? Oh, he's my dear friend. Wonderful, just one. They hate each other. They hate. Trust me, I know. But it's political bullshit. Do you understand? It's true. It's true. We need toughness. Honestly, I think Jeb is a very nice person. He's a very nice person, but we need tough people. We need toughness. We need intelligence, and we need tough. I mean, Japan sends us millions of cars. I was in Los Angeles last week. I looked at some of these boats. They're the biggest boats. I've been around. I've seen boats. They're the biggest boats I've ever seen. They're sending us millions of cars. We send them, in all due respect, wheat. Okay? Not a good trade. I love wheat. It's wonderful. I mean, I talked about Ben the other day, and I talked about his book. He wrote a book. He said he's got pathological disease. Okay. That's a problem to me. Problem. You look at Ben, he's very weak on immigration, and he wants to get rid of Medicare. When a man is weak on immigration and wants to get rid of Medicare, I don't know how he stays there. He said he hit or tried to hit his mother over the head with a hammer. I didn't. Me? Mary McLeod? No way. A couple of young women took over the microphone from Bernie a month ago, right? They took it over, and he was like this, huh? He is not stopping ISIS, I will tell you. If we had honest government, Hillary wouldn't be allowed to run in this case. He wouldn't be allowed to run. You know that. You better remember, there's a 6-year statute of limitations on that crime. So Hillary's running for a lot of reasons. One of them is because she wants to stay out of jail. And I will tell you that if I win, we're going to look into that crime very, very seriously, folks. Very, very seriously.
Well, she has a new hairdo. Did you notice that today?
That's called a wig.
Is that a wig?
I think it's a wig, nothing personal. Look, I'm not against wigs. People can wear whatever they want.
It's okay. But, you know, I tell you what, it really was shocking to see it because you're right. It was massive. You know, her hair became massive.
You know you're going to get in trouble now.
I don't care.
One of the worst Secretary of States in the history of the country. She talks about me being dangerous. She's killed hundreds of thousands of people with her stupidity. People are getting away with murder. I never saw anything like this. You can say anything about anybody, and their poll numbers go up. If you try and hit your mother over the head with a hammer, your poll numbers go up. He said he tried to stab somebody, hit the belt buckle. No belt buckle stop because they're going to twist and turn and slide, and it's going in. If a strong guy goes like this, it's going in. It's not stopping. Everyone tells me Rubio's a wonderful speaker. I said, well, really? Tell me why. Remember when he was doing the message to the president? Now, the president had just spoken, right? And he's doing the message. This is a big thing. They selected him, I think because he was young. So they selected him. And he's talking. I notice, I say, man, is he sweating. And then all of a sudden, and we will fight and we will this. And it wasn't out of a glass, it was out of a bottle. I don't know, maybe he got paid for the company that had the bottle. I don't know. It's the weirdest thing. And then they said, oh, he did such a great job. I said, oh, he did?
We have a president, I swear, I think he's a stupid person, because there's no way that a normal president can make the speech that he made the other night.
And we need, and I talk to you this way. I talk to you this way because that's the mentality, whether I'm nice or not. I think I'm nice, actually. So Chris, who's a friend of mine, he hit me hard. And I said, I got to hit him at least once. So I won't do this a lot, but look, here's the story. The George Washington Bridge. He knew about it. Hey, how do you have breakfast with people every day of your lives? They're closing up the largest bridge in the world, the biggest in the United States, traffic flowing during rush hour. People couldn't get across for 6-7 hours. Ambulances, fire trucks. They're with them all the time, the people that did it. They never said, hey, boss, we're closing up the George Washington Bridge tonight. No, they never said. They're talking about the weather, right? Yeah, I think he's a nice guy, probably. Who knows? I don't care. I don't care.
I was wondering what you would say to President Obama.
You're fired.
So you're thinking, I know what you're thinking. Is it possible that this guy who's a caricature of a presidential candidate, is it possible for him to become a president? Yes, it is possible. Worst things have happened. So just to kind of get our mindset ready for a Trump presidency, just in case we wake up the day after the election and we now have Trump as a president. How will this affect Africa? Badly. I can assure you his approach toward Africa will be back to that colonial mentality view of looking at Africa as an exploitative victim or a continent to further exploit for its natural resources and nothing more. So if you're thinking your family are going to come and visit you in the U.S. or, vice versa. I don't think so. Green card lottery, I don't think so. Business opportunity, back and forth, exporting or importing from Africa, I don't think so. The only time Trump will go to Africa will be to go there and basically rape and pillage whatever it is that we have left there. And our leaders in Africa are pretty, if not for corrupt leaders, we don't have any in Africa. They're pretty much, I wouldn't even say second class or third class in their approach to U.S., that they will pretty much take anything as long as bribery is being put into their foreign Swiss bank account and let the masses in Africa suffer. So my view of it, if Trump is totally anti-other races, he will not give a damn about Africa. In fact, he's actually told in some press interview that Nigerians should go back to Nigeria, which pretty much you can duplicate that to all the other African countries. And so the approach of that would not be very good. Now, it seems like a political paid advertisement for Hillary Clinton, but when you talk about qualification as a Secretary of State, Hillary has traveled far and wide through Africa. He knows pretty much all the leaders in Africa. And I think if Hillary, became the president of the United States, this will actually be a win-win for Africa. And I'll tell you why. We have this culture in Africa where even though the women are doing most of the work, they're pretty much undermined in any homes, pretty much. As a result, the way this translates into position of power is that we have all these men who are as corrupt as dirt, who have run Africa pretty much to the ground. Take Nigeria, for example. If not for crooks, we've never had a real good leader who actually look at the country and say, hey, This is my country. I want to make the road looks like Dubai road, or make the road looks like any of the foreign country where I have my harems, or I have multiple houses in Europe. I want those houses to reflect what's going on in Nigeria. We've never had that. Instead, what we had are people who basically just stole our money, stole the oil resources, and basically just left Nigeria to its own devices while all their cronies are flying around and driving around at the expense of the masses. So when you now have a Secretary of State of the United States, a woman coming and telling you to get your house in orders, most of the African leaders did not like that. They did not take kindly to the fact that Hillary was telling them that the U.S. many handouts until they clean house, until they address their human rights issues, until they address equality for women, until they address childhood health and education within their country. So most of these leaders in Africa are there secretly hoping that Hillary will not win, because if Hillary wins, she's going to basically now come back with a bigger hammer now, telling them, look, you need to get your stuff together. And nothing could be more worst in such a male-dominated community than a woman coming to tell you to get your stuff, sorted out. So I think Hillary can come in as a leader, and the relationship of Hillary Clinton who actually indirectly empowered the women in Africa. She's already doing that. Whenever she travels to any African country, she goes out to encourage the women and empower them and give them lectures and ideas on how they could sustain themselves and be independent and be free of the male-dominated society that we unfortunately do have. So I think becoming the president will give her a much bigger platform to be able to hopefully positively impact Africa and influence Africa. And unlike previous U.S. leaders who basically, again, look at Africa as a resource to just go there and if they want to take in slaves, they were stealing our gold or any other oil or whatever resources we have, Hillary Clinton has said in many interviews, in many press releases that she's had before, her view of Africa, which is basically an independent Africa that is self-sustaining, that's able to build itself and stand on its own 2 feet. Imagine, if she's in power at the White House, you probably will see less of the so-called Nigerian leaders or African leaders coming to beg for money. And when they get those grant money, half of those money don't even make it back to Nigeria or make it back to any other country where they're coming to beg for, or going to the G7 summit when they really have no business being there, but they're there just to beg for their loan to be forgiven or stuff like that, instead of basically being disciplined to run a well self-sustaining country. So I think Hillary Clinton being in leadership would not only be good for America because she's put a lot of effort into. I mean, this is a woman who was basically fighting for free healthcare or universal healthcare when she literally has no political office or power. She was just a first lady. She could have just stayed in the White House like all the other first lady and talking about childhood education or reading books and all the other kind of stuff that low impact activity that first lady generally do. But she basically went to the Senate and Congress and say, universal health, which was a foundation for Obamacare today. And she has a lot of chutzpah to be able to look at men in the face, which is why I believe even here in the United States, many of the male-dominated parties like Republican Party, they can't stand her, because Republicans like to keep their women pretty much in the closet, pretty much. They keep them in a small role. They don't really allow the women to come out and talk. There's only actually a few women in the Republican Party who are in the Senate today compared to, say, the Democrats. So I'm basically, thinking that Hillary's presidency will, in a lot of ways, impact and change the dynamic of power, not only within the United States, but also in Africa. So that is my take on Hillary. The only person not being talked about right now is Bernie Sanders. Okay, and many of you are thinking, who? Well, Bernie Sanders is, again, joined the Democratic Party last year. He was, pretty much in the Independent or Liberty Party prior to now for most of his life. And, not a bad guy. It could be worse if he's the president. But unfortunately, because, Bernie Sanders has been around now for, he's in his 70s. And most of his view now are the same view that he had in the 70s. And unfortunately, he's not really been able to push those views and agenda to any level to be able to actually make any impact. And the far part of it is that, he's basically now going around with this idea that, people who own student loans don't have to pay, there's going to be free this and there's going to be free that. And, Democratic Party, is fairly liberal. They're fairly liberal in Democratic Party, and they believe in social justice and equality. But when it comes to making false promises of free this and free that, investors, people who actually own money in this country, know that when you start doing that and there's no tax revenue to back the currency, their portfolio will go south very quickly. So there's got to be this balance of generosity and at the same time being able to have social responsibilities and getting tax revenue to pay for public schools, housing, and all the other benefit that people who do not have money can do. So in an ideal world, you should be able to get money to pay for road repairs and so on and so forth, and actually get revenue coming in to be able to actually make sure that the currency, the dollar currency, is just not being printed and to pay for things, just like Donald Trump said last week that he wants to basically, there's no deficit, we just print more currency. If that happens, US dollar won't be worth much, which is what China pretty much does anyway and get away with it. So realistically with the numbers, I don't think Bernie Sanders is gonna catch up with Hillary Clinton enough to actually get a nomination. And the core Democratic Party voters in this country are actually not supporting Bernie Sanders' initiative to become the president because his base is not really that unifying. If you look at it closely, it's not very diverse as far as the people who are actually voting for him goes. Yeah, sure, he's basically getting a lot of students who are going to his rallies and voting for him, which is not bad. But the reality is that most of these people are not even registered to be able to impact the elections to the level that they should be able to. So that's just pretty much the reality in a nutcase. What is Bernie Sanders' view about the rest of the world beyond the U.S.? Who knows? He's not really talking about anything. He's not really talking about his international view, his international opinions, or economy outlook either. Is most of his agendas are mostly the socialist type agenda, and he's basically been, talking about free this and promising free student loans and free schools and free all that, which is, it sounds pretty great, but in practice, he's not been able to actually have a portfolio, resume of action that he's done in his 70-some years to actually show that he can deliver on those things that he's done. And the worst part of it is the fact that all this time he's not been in the Democratic Party, but he's joined the Democratic Party now for the sole purpose of using the Democratic Party as a platform to run for presidency. So what happened to all those people who have been working all this time in the Democratic Party to kind of like build the party up and fundraise to encourage women to become confident enough to vote to run for political office, all that kind of stuff. So those are my points against Bernie Sanders, that if you had these views, where were those views all these years? Why were you kind of standing by and only caucusing with the Democratic Party when it's convenient for you, but not actually being there, rolling up your sleeves and doing the hard work that it requires to actually, make those ideas that you have become reality? So that is my opinion. So I can't really give you a fair assessment as far as to how Bernie Sanders' presidency will affect Africa or the rest of the world. Couldn't tell you that. But I know for sure the worst thing that could happen to Africa in this election is Trump in the office. I mean, it will even make George Bush look like a saint if Trump became the president, because his lack of fiscal responsibility, his lack of decorum. I mean, if you're talking about a classic case of a guy who you can use an example for saying money doesn't buy a class. Money does not buy a class in this case. This guy is so childish and kindergarten in his behavior towards people who are in his party, toward women, toward everybody, and the arrogance is there. I mean, you saw the video. All you have to do is basically he lives in his own world 24/7, and he doesn't think much of women at all, but he has daughters. So that is my opinion on the political aspect in the U.S. We'll come back in again and talk about trending subjects and also update you on where we are, where we're heading to. And why you're wondering, does it really matter to you if you're in your village in Africa somewhere? Why should you care what the U.S. president is? You should care, because at any given time, the U.S. government could determine or decide to start a war somewhere, or could determine or decide to do a trade embargo or something like that, of that nature. Believe it or not, this will impact you both directly and indirectly. And this has historically been the case where when you do bring in a leader into the country, in the U.S., whose view is basically just about themselves and mostly U.S.-centric without thinking about equal trade or international concerns with their behaviors, the whole entire world suffers. And when they decide to start a war or invade another country, everybody suffers. So U.S. is not the world, but what takes place in the U.S. affects everybody in the world. Every human being on the planet is affected based on the politics, geopolitical activities within the U.S. So that is my opinion on the political events. Until next time, look forward to seeing you guys and keeping you updated and giving you the real deal on African perspectives of how the politics and activities in the U.S. and affect us directly and indirectly. Until then, thanks for your time. Again, my name is Michael Onas, WorldBeat Radio and Television. Good night.